All right. So today we have a another very large class in AppFiles. But I wanted to start off this class by introducing everybody to the H&R Trainer YouTube account. Some of y'all already know about this. This is the new YouTube account for career services. Between Emily and I, we're loading at least 5 to 6 videos into it each week, covering all different types of categories. And it's a great resource, and the easiest way to find it is when you go to YouTube at the top line, H&R Space Trainer, and you can join and you can subscribe to it, and you'll see all the new and upcoming the videos that we've added. Also, when I do a training class like this one, I always add the video to YouTube. So if you want to check back later, if you missed something or you need to cover something later on, this is a great resource. Perfect. All right. All right. So I am going to break this class up into certain sections so that I can address questions. So I'll cover a certain category, for instance, setting up your account in AppFiles, and then I will address questions, and then I will go into the actual scenario of you working with a buyer and creating an AppFiles. So to get started, I'm going to kind of go fairly slow because I know I have a lot of first timers using AppFiles in here. So to get started in AppFiles, you will need to go to your My H&R office, or you can go directly into AppFiles to log in, and you need to go to the drop-down hamburger and go to your AppFiles button and log into AppFiles. Okay. I would also recommend, if you can, have FMLS matrix available, because we are going to be acting as a buyer, and we're going to be pulling in some information from a listing that I'm going to be using. So just open it to the side, FMLS, and just have it available for whenever we get to the AppFiles part. Okay. So the very first part of AppFiles, I cover first the navigation of the home window. When you look at AppFiles, you'll notice at the very top left, there's your home button, which brings you back to this particular page. You have My AppFiles, which are all your current AppFiles that are going on at the moment. Your second is your signature request, which shows you the status of your signatures that are outbound. It also shows you how many are needed. If you need to resend it, it's date stamped. Your next is your My Inbox, which is tied to this top email address. So if there's any communications with this email address, it'll show up here. We will be working with spoofing this email address so that instead of coming from this email address, it'll come from your Harry Norman email address. It's going to be more of a preference based on whatever you feel is more valuable to you. Most office managers recommend spoofing, so I'll go over that. Also, you have your activity, which is all of your current interactions, from documents to requests, signature requests. This is where you'll see this. And lastly are the tasks. And tasks are more of your interaction with your staff members. If you're missing something, they can put a task in for you. It's more of just if you need to do something. That's what the taskbar is for. Also on the home window, you'll notice that there's recent AppFiles on your right, just like My AppFiles. You also have your recent activity, which is also right here. You have your task, which are in the center. Okay. What we're about to cover is over here on your left, which is your setup of your settings for AppFiles. And under your actions, these are what are tied to your app file itself, and I will go over that as well. All right, let me just pull my window aside. Oh, well, thank you. I got a message that someone loved my clients that I'm using, and if you haven't noticed, I'm normally using singers from bands. All right, so to first get started, as a new person in AppFiles, we need to set up your account. And to set up your account, you need to go to the very top left and click on Upload a Photo. Okay. In this window, you're going to browse to find your headshot. So I'm going to take this a little slower. I'm going to click on my browse option and I'm going to go and grab my headshot. Okay. Make sure your headshot is readily available for you can grab it on your desktop or in your documents. Make sure it's easy to get to. Once you have your file in place, you're going to start your upload. And as quick as that, your headshot is in place. Okay. Your next is fitting in your email settings. Okay. The recommendations that I'm going to be giving are from office managers. So do what makes sense for you when it comes to setting up your app files. I'm just going to tell you what they've recommended to me. In this particular area, they have recommended that you put a copy my primary email address on all emails so that you get a copy of anything that you're pushing out. Okay, so you would click on this checkbox. This will be this top primary email address, which should be your Harry Norman email address, will be replacing the AppFiles email address if you choose to spoof your email address. So instead of getting your via AppFiles email, you will be using your Harry Norman email. Now, I have heard several people say that it goes to, there's a possibility that it will go to spam. In the 4 months that I've been training AppFiles, I have not heard much of this. Maybe 1 or 2 encounters, but if it does go to their spam folder, switch it over back to appfiles.net, and that's not a problem. It's not going to hurt anything. I would also recommend that when you send something through AppFiles, that you send some kind of follow-up to your contact, just guaranteeing that they've received the email. You should have an open line of communication anyway when it comes to real estate. So I would recommend selecting the spoof your email address. Next is your email footer. In your email footer, this is a one-time setup. What you will need to do is you will need to go to your email and you will need to comprise an email that is blank, that only has your signature in it. So you're going to create a brand new email with just your signature in it, and you're going to send this email to this email address. So you're going to click your copy option and you're going to send a blank email with just your email signature to this email address. Now, if there's some formatting issues that you run into and it looks kind of strange, my recommendation is to use email.harrynorman to send this communication. Sometimes Outlook has some HTML formatting that's attached to it. So if it doesn't go through correctly the first time, go into email.harrynorman, log in, and send the email through the browser. Okay. Make sure after you've done this action, you refresh your window, and you'll see this. I'm going to give this a couple of minutes to make sure people can get this action completed. Now you can come back and make these edits at any time, but truly it is a one-time setup. If you're having problems getting into AppFiles due to your login information, please reach out to your office staff. They have your logins. They're supposed to email them to you when you first come in as an agent. This video will be posted on YouTube tonight, so if you get a little bit behind, it is available for you to backtrack and check. All right, so the last option after you've gotten your signature into AppFiles, you are going to go to your default mobile view, and recommendation is to switch it to full desktop view. Some of these may have already been set as defaults that I'm covering, but I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. If you're primarily a mobile view person, you can select this option, but if you mainly work from a computer, I would go with the full desktop view. It's more of the orientation within the window. Nothing seems out of place. And that is how you set up your account. I'm going to see if there's any questions real quick. Okay, so it says, hi Drew, my email address or my email signature looks nothing like it does on Outlook. Okay, so you've run into the same situation I was explaining. Try sending your email through email.harrynorman instead of your standard Outlook program. So what it's doing is it's trying to understand the formatting behind your signature. So give that a shot and see if that works for you. Anybody have any real quick questions before we open up a new app file and get started? Okay. What is email.harrynorman? Oh no, so you're going to log in through your browser is what I'm saying. You're going to go to email.harrynorman.com and you're going to log into your email that way rather than using Outlook. I can check back with you afterwards if you don't have it. It's not a problem. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to cover, in my opinion, is the most important part of AppFiles. It is your form values. When you click on this button over here in your profile section for form values, you'll notice that there are forms that are tied to this account. These are the items that you can pre-fill in advance, so you only have a one-time setup. Okay, the example that I'm going to cover is your buyer brokerage agreement. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to go to your exclusive buyer brokerage agreement and I'm going to bring it up. Okay, these forms that are in your form values will be reflected every time you use them in your app files. They can still be edited, but you can do some pre-filling at this moment that'll help you for the long term when you import values. So an example I'm going to cover with this buyer brokerage agreement is I'm going to go to page 6 of 10. I'm going to scroll down. One option you could also cover, if you have special stipulations that you use every time you set up an app file, you can pre-fill your special steps. Even if you're going to remove one, say you want to put 3 special steps in here that you normally use, you can remove one of them when you actually use the file, but they will already be pre-added to this form. That's just a suggestion. So in this scenario, for the buyer brokerage agreement, I have gone in and I went ahead and filled in my contact information on this particular page because I know that it's going to be the same every time I use this particular form. So that's what I would encourage you doing now. I'm going to give you a few minutes to fill in your contact information because I'm going to show you how I'm going to import this data when I start my app files. So I have a question that says, as GAR updates contracts and do we have to redo them? I don't believe the data will communicate across, but I'm not terribly sure. So I would check with your staff about that particular question. In my mind, if a new form is added into AppFiles, you would probably need to fill it in again, but I'm not terribly sure. Okay, so saying that you filled in your contact information on your buyer brokerage agreement, you can now close this document out and this information will stay alongside with this particular document. I would recommend you doing it to all the primary documents that you would normally use, from purchase and sale, any item that you know that you're going to use in a transaction. If you can pre-fill in some information, go ahead and do this. That's why it's so valuable. Time saver mostly. Okay, so now that we've done our initial setup, we filled in our information, we have our signature in line, we've got our footer done, we've gone in and we've filled in some information on one of our form values for buyer brokerage. I'm going to go over how to create a new app file. So your app file is going to be your folder for your contact. So I'm going to start off by creating a new app file, and I'm going to name it Bon Jovi as my contact. You're not truly trying to name it based on what they're going to do. You're naming it because this is the person you're going to represent. Also, and you can rename this later on, this is just your first step. Also, you need to determine what file type they are. Bon Jovi will be a buyer today. I'm working with a buyer. Once again, in AppFiles, when you select this particular folder, you have more fields that you can pre-fill in, which will be valuable down the road. So the more you can fill in, the better. You already know who the agent's name is. And you know that you're representing a buyer. So whatever you can pre-fill in AppFiles, it'll help you in the long term. Okay. Since this is an example, I'm just going to move down to the bottom and I'm going to click next. Okay, so this is your user access section. In this scenario, if you are working with team members or you have a mentor you would like included on this app file so they can check your work, this would be your area to do so. You would come over to your left side and you would click on the plus sign of the individual in your office you're working with, and they would drop over here on that they will have access to this app file. Okay. I'm going to create my app file, and here we are. So this is your new app file folder. Okay. Before I move forward, I'm going to see if there's any questions I can address. Okay, so yeah, Denise, thank you for covering it. The forms, it won't pre-fill. The forms are uploaded as new forms and will have to be done each time. Thank you for covering that. I appreciate that. So the question is, where is it that you pre-fill that out? Going back to your app files main page, it's under form values. Okay, so you would select form values. It'll open this window and you can fill in information in advance in this window. So I think when you have especially right now with the scenario we're in, I would be in and I'd be filling in all of my form values and go ahead and have it done. Anything that you can get in, get it done. Do I have any other questions? Okay, cool. Well, I figured there's a lot of people, there should be more questions. Okay, so, and I mean, I understand I'm just going over the logistics behind this program. So the very first thing we're going to cover now that we have created our contact and we have our app file made, we are going to add a form to our actual app file. So at the very top left, we're going to click on the Add Forms option. And we are going to go grab that buyer brokerage agreement, which if you type in your search line, you can type in buyer, and you'll see there's the form that you need to add. So I'm going to click on Add Buyer Brokerage Agreement to my AppFiles. And I'm going to add the selected form. Okay. So that's adding one form to your AppFiles, and you'll be able to tell over here in General Paperwork that your file has been added in. All right. So saying that you have filled in your buyer brokerage, everything looks good, and you want to go ahead and request a signature, you would go to this particular button in the middle, the request signature, and you would start your signature request on this particular form. Okay. Since I'm working with one individual person, I'm going to type in their name. So Bon Jovi will be added. This is very important that you have the full name of the individual that you are working with. If you have Bon Jovi and you also have to have his wife have her signature as well, you will have to do them in two separate interactions. So for the first one would be Bon Jovi, you would click on buyer signature and you would click next. And this is your engagement date and time if you want to make it more time stamped. But since this is a buyer brokerage agreement, my interaction with Bon Jovi is strong and he and I trust each other and he's ready to sign. So I do not have to put an engagement time and date on this. So I'm going to click next. And this is the email that will be coming for the signature request from AppFiles. Note that you can change any of the information in this email, except I would tell you not to touch this link right here in the middle. So if you want to add a message in advance saying, you know, it was great interacting with you, glad we could look at some wonderful homes, you know, please see the link below to sign the buyer brokerage agreement. That's what this email would be all about. Just stay away from this right here, because that will be the link to the actual signature. Okay. I'm going to put an example. I'm just going to put an H&R trainer to send the request. If you would like to send it to yourself just so you can see what the signature request looks like, this is your chance to do it. And I'm going to click next. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and request my signature. If you needed a staff member or somebody on your team who you've added as a user earlier, they would be here under the user side and they can see this communication, and I'm going to request signature. Perfect. If you have another individual that you need to send a signature request, like a spouse, you would click start a new signature request at this moment. Oops. All right. Do I have any questions before I move into the next part? I think we're doing pretty good at this moment. The program is pretty straightforward. I'm going to go ahead and close out this window. The signature request has been sent out. Okay. So my next item is I'm going to add another form with another attachment to it. Every time you add a form individually, it comes in as an individual form in general paperwork. But if you have two that come in at the same time, they are a grouped paperwork. So I'm going to go to add a form. And I'm going to go and grab a purchase and sale. And I'm also going to add along with it a conventional loan contingency to pair with it. Let's see, I just got a quick question. How do you know what line that signature goes on? Send a test to yourself, send that signature request to yourself, and you'll be able to see the actual line that it lands on, Samantha. All right, so I'm going to add these two selected items. So I just got a question, when will this exact video be added to YouTube? I'm adding 3 videos tonight, including this one. I'm adding the listing agent bootcamp that was Emily's training class yesterday, the CRM from this morning, and this AppFiles tonight. So keep an eye out for it. Okay. So now that we have our documentation, your purchase and sale, and you have your conventional loan contingency, we are going to be importing values. To do this particular scenario, you're going to click on the Import Values button here at the top. You'll notice there's 3 options. I'm going to be covering importing from a form and importing from FMLS. To first get started, I'm going to click on the Import from Form. And knowing that we filled in some paperwork or some form values for the buyer brokerage agreement, it shows that there's 11 values that I can pull from this particular piece. So I'm going to choose this document that I've done pre-fill-ins for. All right, so looking at this import from form, these are the values that are being pulled in from my buyer brokerage agreement, and I'm going to start the import. Perfect. So these have been added to this document that I'm working on currently. Another option that you can have when it involves filling in to importing these values is pulling in from FMLS. In this option, I'm going to click on the Import from FMLS option, and you'll notice that it's going to prompt you for the FMLS or the MLS number of the listing. If you're following along, I'm going to be using this particular listing from Price Curtis. The FMLS number is 6671193. I'm going to give a few people some time to bring up this FMLS and this listing in particular, so you can see how it interacts. All right. So I'll take it a little slow so people can keep up. I'm going to take this FMLS number, and I'm going to go back in and I'm going to paste it into this option to search for it. When you do this action, you'll notice that the listing has been pulled in, which is the listing that I was hoping for, and I am going to choose it, and you will notice that it has new form values that will be added to this document. Now, if there's some items on here that you do not want to carry over, you can deselect it over here. It is an option. Lastly, you'll need to click on the I acknowledge and agree the terms, and you can start your import. Perfect. So now I have 2 different values coming into this document from my buyer brokerage and from FMLS. And now that I have completed these 2 options, I'm going to click done. And you'll notice as you scroll down that the fields have been pulled into the purchase and sale agreement. Do I have any questions about how to use form values? Once again, the more you can pre-fill in, the better. That way you don't have to hand fill in the fields. Sure, of course. I have someone who asked if I could repeat the import values again. Of course. So basically, once you have your document, which is what I have right now, I added a form for a purchase and sale agreement with the with a contingency, I believe. Wait a minute. Yeah, with a conventional loan contingency. When the document came up, I clicked on this yellow button at the top, the import values, which brings you to this particular window. And since I have form values already filled in for my buyer brokerage agreement, when I clicked on import from a form, my buyer brokerage showed up as an option. Okay, so I selected it, I pulled in the form values from my buyer brokerage, and then it prompted me if I wanted to do another import. So I selected import from FMLS, which asked me to put the MLS number in, and I pulled in that particular, I'll paste it real quick and search it. So when I put in the FMLS number, it shows the listing, I chose it, and I pulled in the forms from it as well. Okay. All right, so I'm going to close this window out. All right, I'm going to let people kind of catch up for a quick second. Okay. So now, the next item that we're going to cover is how to import or how to add documentation to this AppFiles on that particular listing we were just discussing. I'm going to bring back up Matrix, and I'm going to go to this option right here that says documents that are tied to this listing. When you click on this option, you'll notice that the documents that are in RDocs are available. So my goal at this point is to get this documentation into my AppFiles for Bon Jovi. Okay, so I'm going to show you 3 different ways of getting this documentation into Bon Jovi's AppFile. One easy one that's pretty straightforward and most people use is just downloading the item by clicking on the checkbox, clicking on this drop down, and clicking on the print option so that I can download it to my desktop. I'm going to click on the download button here, and I'm going to place this document on my desktop so that I can upload it into my AppFiles. And I'm going to name it here lead-based. Okay, so now that I have the document sitting on my desktop, I can go back to Bon Jovi, and I can click on the upload file option for my app file, and I'm going to go browse and grab that document that's sitting on my desktop. Now you see that I have the PDF available, and I'm going to start the upload. Okay, I'm going to click the OK, and you'll notice on the left side of my app file, the lead-based has been added to my app file for Bon Jovi. I have, how did you bring back FMLS from that screen? I actually never closed it. I had it saved as one of my browsers at the top. I left it open so I could reference it. Okay. Another option for getting this particular document or any documents into AppFiles is the action of emailing the documents to your AppFiles folder. Now, every time you create an AppFile folder, you will have an email address tied to it right here in the center. Okay? One tidbit that I've heard from numerous people is that having it say 5736 is not truly valuable, but you can edit that email address as well. If you click on the edit bar, you can change the name of the address that's tied to this particular app file. I've heard a few people say that they've changed it to their contact's name, which is awesome. Whichever makes it easier for you. I also encourage, if you're going to use this system a lot, save this email address into your phone so it makes it easier for you to get documentation to your app files. So the way you would use this particular option of emailing documentation into app files, you would click on your copy button right here to get the email address readily available. You would come up to your matrix documents, which I'll reopen. You can either send one document, which is an option. Say I select seller's property disclosure statement and I click down here for the drop down and select email. I can select one item and email it to my app files, or you can select several items and email this particular items to your app files. The more items, it might take longer for it to upload, but I do want to show this action. So I have all the documents from FMLS that I plan to bring into my app files. You're going to paste that email address that's tied to your Bon Jovi app file. One thing to remember is when you paste it in, it does have some items tied to the email address that you do not want to stay there. So I'm going to delete the bracket behind and the name and bracket in front so that all it is an email address. After you've done this, knowing that the files are all in place, you can send the document to your app file. Now, the great thing about using this email option is if someone sends you documentation in an email, you can also forward those items into your app files. Whatever it takes to get your documentation into the app file that you need. Do I have any questions on how to get items into your app files? They're all pretty straightforward. Your goal is to either upload it as a document or you can send it as an email into your app file. Let's see if my items have all come in. I'm going to refresh my window. Yep, there they are. So you'll notice now that I have email paperwork now in my app file to use. You can tell by this class, I'm not teaching you how to be an agent. I'm teaching you how this program functions and the different ways that you are going to use it. All right. I do not have any questions just yet. All right. So the next item I'm going to cover is how to edit a form. And one item that I'm going to bring up real quick to edit, I'm going to edit because I'm going to add items to this document. I'm going to bring up the legal description. I'm going to click on the item. And so here's your form. I'm going to click on the edit button, which is asking me to convert the document so that you can add elements to it. I'm going to click on the start conversion. And you'll notice that this document now has an element window next to the document so you can add certain items to it. This is a great way to add text. For instance, if you need to add an exhibit to this line, you can click on the Add New Elements text option, and you can place your cursor right here next to exhibit, and you can type in this text, Exhibit A, and hit create. So you've added the element to the form. You can also click on it once which gives you the option to move your item, or you can even delete the selected element if it's something that you would like to change or remove. Okay. Another option is adding an initial to this form. If you want to add an initial, you'll need to select the role that the initial is coming from. So I will select buyer initial. I will click on the place the initial onto the document, which creates this cursor, and I will click, and now you have an initial element added to your document. Before I finish up with this, I'm going to add one more item. I'm going to add a signature line. So you would once again have to select your role. You would click on the buyer signature. You would place the signature onto your document, and now you have a buyer signature line. That is how the elements work for the editor. You also can strike through, you can add graphics, like right now it has a circular item. It's pretty straightforward for adding elements. Do I have any questions about this? Okay, pretty straightforward. Most of y'all have worked with a program very similar to how this works. I get that. I'm going to close out this option, and you'll notice here's the elements that have been added. Okay. I'm making sure I haven't missed anything just yet. Not having agents in front of me is very difficult. All right, so I'm going to close this out. The next item that I'm going to cover is, let me see, I'm looking for, uh-oh. They've moved one of the elements. No, it's over here on the left, sorry. So the next item I'm going to cover is merging paperwork. So now that I have my items all to the left, I want to merge the items together. So I'm going to click on the merge paperwork option, and you'll notice that these are all the forms that are available for this particular app file. I am going to select the items that I want to merge. So I'm going to click on my purchase and sale, lead-based, legal description, seller property disclosure, and I'll go ahead and add the others too, just so you can see how they merge, because I'm going to be able to split them apart as well. In this window over here on your right, you'll notice that these are all the items. You can move the arrangement. These green lines on the left side allows you to move the document. So if I want to move my seller's property disclosure up further, you can click on it and drag it up. I'll also show you another area where you can manipulate the arrangement as well. So after I've selected all the items, I'm going to click on the merge selected items option. It's going to start converting the items into one document. And then you'll notice now I have a compressed document that has all of the items within it. And if you see over here on the left, all the documents are now in one particular group. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to cover, well, actually, let me see if there's any questions before I move any further. Anybody have any quick questions? Looks like we're moving pretty steadily. Perfect. So now that I've merged my documents, I also want to give you the scenario that you might want to split them up as well, which comes up all the time. So I'm going to go over to my edit pages window. I've got a quick question. So I was asked, where did you get those initial and signature fields from? So what I did was, to get those initials and those elements, I went to I brought up the document that I was adding the elements to, and I clicked on the edit button here on the right side, which when I brought up the document, it had me convert the document so I could edit, and then it also allowed me to add elements to it, if that answers your question. Thank you for the nice words. I appreciate that. All right, now that we've covered this, I'm going to go back into the splitting up of the document. So now that we have our merged document, I'm going to go to the edit pages, which is where you'll see all of the documents, and they are segmented into groups. You can tell by these lines that split them up. Conventional loan contingency, the documents are within that group. Okay. If you need to move the documents within that segment, you're going to click on Organize Pages. So I'm only changing what's in this one particular segment if I have a page that's out of place. So I'm going to click on Organize Pages, and you can click and drag whichever document you need to move within that segment. Okay, so that's within that segment. I'm going to click Save Changes. Another way of moving your documentation is by changing form order. When you click on the form order, you'll notice that your documents are all lined up right here. Just like I showed you when I first brought them in, you can click and drag whatever item you need. So that is your organizing of the forms. Change form order. And as you can tell, there's a button right next to it that says Split Forms. And it's exactly what you're expecting. When you click on the split forms, you'll have your documents all lined up. You can either remove one item by selecting the checkbox and making it a new general paperwork, or you can split up all of the documents so they sit alone. And when you click the split selected forms, you get a confirmation that your forms have been successfully split up. And I'll click OK. And you'll notice on your left side, you'll have the documents all split up again. Okay. Lastly, I'm going to, well, not really lastly, I want to cover a few more things. So I'm going to go back and merge my documents. I've clicked on Merge Paperwork. I have selected my purchase, conventional loan, legal description, seller's property disclosure. I'll go ahead and add all the items. It's not going to hurt anything. It's more of how it functions. Once again, you can move any item you'd like right here. I'm going to merge my selected items back together. And I can now show you. So for instance, you're at a point where you would like to basically forward a rough draft to Bon Jovi. You want to get them to look it over before they sign. So in this moment, you would click here on this green button of your purchase and sale, and you're going to send via email. When you do this, a new window will pop up. You will put your contact's information, their email address at the top. I recommend testing how this looks. I would send an example to myself and see how the email comes through with the PDF attached. I would also put in a solid message just so they know what they're receiving, that it's a proof for them to review. Open communication, of course, is important. You scroll down to the bottom and you can click on the send message. So you can send the proof of the document to your client. Okay, so the message has been sent. So I just got a question. It says, can you delete a page? Yes, when you go under your actions, you can delete an item. Okay. Also, something to keep in mind, everybody has different types of naming conventions. for their documentation at this top of this window, how it still says purchase and sale agreement, you can click on this pencil option and rename the item. Just remember, after you've renamed the item, you need to click this green checkbox to confirm the change has been made. You also can print, and you can also download your item as well. Okay, so we're getting towards the end here. So the last thing I'm going to cover is different in every office. I'm going to go over how the traditional way that I know to turn in your paperwork. Okay, so if you're trying to turn in your buyer brokerage agreement, in my scenario, I would be changing this section here at the top after I've renamed my document using the pencil again, and I would put it into broker docs, which is my way of submitting my documentation. I would also, after I've turned into broker docs, I would also put a, let me see, where's my update option? Oh, they've moved everything. Oh, I would click on this green option for create an update, and I would update my staff member that I have put in the buyer brokerage agreement into the broker docs. I would select my staff member's name, and then I would say, hey, just want to let you know that the buyer brokerage agreement has been added to broker docs. Now, like I said, this is going to be taught differently by, is a different scenario for every office, but what I would recommend is that you check with your staff member and make sure that the way that you should be doing it from here on out is, the way they would like it. All right. Also, the last thing that I'm going to cover is submitting your, uh-oh. Yeah, see, for instance, I actually have a staff member on this call right now. She mentioned that we don't use that. We use the file type, changed from buyer to new pending. Which actually still is how I teach how to turn in your purchase and your final contract. So when I click on the purchase and sale, which I would rename it probably to offer 2362 Montview. And then, so to submit this particular contract, I would change general paperwork. So wait a minute, I'm sorry, I'm checking with what this staff member. So you wouldn't put your document into broker docs? Oh, fair enough, fair enough. Okay. So yeah, each office is different. So you're thinking more of the app file as a whole. So your final submission of the documentation, you would go up to your edit. And so when you're turning into a staff member, the offer, you would change this to offer, and the address. And instead of it saying buyer for your submission, you would change it to new pending, and that would be your submission. Gotcha. Gotcha. And that's roughly how you would do your submission. You would change your buyer brokerage to broker docs, and your whole document for your contact, you would change here. You would rename it to the offer. You would change buyer to new pending, and that would be your submission. But like I said, it's different in every office.